Hello, and welcome to another episode of Redacted Nuisance. Thank you for coming along and joining us in this wonderful, weird adventure where I record randomly for 15 minutes and then put it up without ever having listened to it. So you hear the mistakes at the same time I do, because I don't listen back to this, I don't edit it. This is just a live 15-minute also rant. This came. It is called Redacted Nuisance because if I called it Queer Nuisance, less people would be able to find it thanks to censorship around LGBTQ plus identities upon Tinternet. Also, there's a number of locations where somebody would never even be shown this podcast if it was called Queer Nuisance. Part of the reason of why I called it Queer Nuisance is that's a describer of me, pretty much. And that came from going to one queer lecture once by Sarah Ahmed, who introduced me to the notion of queer nuisance, and I took that on as an entire identity. This is why you don't let scientists like myself go to queer theory lectures. We tend to take things just a little bit seriously. I also found that she used the Lamarckian theory of evolution absolutely hilarious, but I seem to be the only person in the auditorium that evening who found the notion of Lamarckian evolutionary theory hilarious, which also shows why you don't take by people who've got a degree in biological sciences and have never been to queer lectures to a queer theory lecture and expect them to understand entirely what's going on. That's an entire aside. So this is Redacted Nuisance. And it's called Redacted Nuisance, not Queer Nuisance, because we want it to be people to be able to find it. The other thing, this is recorded just in one take. It's thrown up in that one take. I don't even listen back to it. All I do is while I record, I keep an eye on the levels and make sure that I keep the mic somewhat near my mouth and all of those things. My brain will occasionally fritz because I have had 2 head injuries, I have CPTSD, and I've been through menopause. So if after that you're like, oh my God, you can hold a train of thought for 15 minutes, yes, it is an absolute miracle. So what I thought about chatting on today was I realised it is about 5 years since I embarked on one of the most interesting journeys that I've been on, and it was during lockdown. And I got a message from a lovely person who I know called Harry Gay, who said, hey, we want to run a party. Would you know how to do this? And within a number of minutes, I had figured out how to set up a webinar Zoom. I had organised a Zoom webinar license that was large enough from the company that I work for. And I had started to figure out all the practicalities of hosting a webinar on Zoom to play music. And this was 5 years ago, which sounds quite remarkable because it honestly feels like yesterday. And that first night we made a lot of mistakes around levels, around how we had people in and out of the different types of users. We struggled to explain some things, but we got better and better at explaining it throughout the night. By the end of the night, we'd solved a number of technology issues. And everyone was like, this was amazing. My friends, it was some of their first goes at DJing. I didn't realise that. I thought they'd been DJing for a while, but they'd just been DJing in their house to each other and doing some mixes. And they were mixing live on this recorded stream. We had maybe about 50 to 100 people join us across the world, came along to Queer House Party. I was sitting there just kind of managing the tech and listening to the music. I'm not a DJ. I can put together a meme playlist and kind of mushy songs together a little bit in the overlap, but I'm not a DJ. And everyone was like, this was a great thing, let's do it again next week. So we did. The next week, I got to experience what it's like to have literal neo-Nazis turn up literal Nazis turn up. And fortunately, throughout the week, I'd figured out a few more of the techniques that you could use within Zoom. So I knew how to block people. I was down to being able to block the neo-Nazis within about 8 seconds of them turning up. And I also knew which blocking would make it harder and harder for them to come back into the call. There was some IP blocking going on, and these were obviously kids who were not smart enough to set up a vast number of VPNage. It was literal teenagers coming along, I believe, literal teenagers coming along to try to harass some of the queers, and we just slapped them back and slapped them down as quickly as possible. But in going through that experience, we then figured out how we would honeypot them in the future, how we would manage it, and how we would keep as many people as safe as possible and away from the abuse. So we started to publicise that. To do all of that, we started to put together a Google site. So in the meantime, during all of this, I'd also worked with via Harrogate and a couple of other people, especially Carla, Ikola, who is one of the most amazing charity people you will ever meet, who runs the LGBT Outside Project. They had come to me and said, how do we create a virtual community centre? Because our community still needs the ability to connect and get together, but we're all in lockdown. We've all got this. And within a short period of time, I had figured out, using Zoom Rooms and Google Sites, how we could build a small but quite functional community centre that had protected rooms, had unprotected rooms, had open rooms, and also housed Queer House Party as a kind of celebration room once a week. And all of this was put together very, very quickly with a lot of help from the various people at the company I work at, ThoughtWorks, which was totally amazing because there was lots of people who just understood the need and turned things around. So first week, we run the party based from the website. Second week, we have the neo-Nazis. So by the third week, we've got the entry page to the website explaining a lot of what's going to happen. We then also started to bring in accessibility. And bringing in accessibility online is really important. And also, at the time, it was still quite difficult because I don't think a lot of people had been thinking about it. And this is not to say that we were, solving the world's biggest problems or anything like that. It was that accessibility is usually a second or third thought. It's not people's first thought when they create software. It's not people's first thought when they create a system. So I think it was about the third week we discovered Max, who is a brilliant BSL interpreter, who's also of the LGBT community. And they were signing, I think they were sign dancing or signing to some people, and we spotted them. We started a conversation, and they became our access coordinator in some ways. They set up and made sure that we had captioning, we had BSL interpretation, and we also had audio description. And one of the hardest things to set up was audio description, because what you actually need is like a second audio line into the same meeting. And this took us, we tried a couple of different models, looking through all of the kind of information and documentation of Zoom. There was a lot of talk about using translation lines, so we thought, okay, audio description is very much like translation. Let's see if that works. And it didn't work. People couldn't control the levels of audio description and the levels of music. If you wanted to just listen to the music and not hear the audio description quite so loud, that was really impossible to manage the levels, and there was all these kinds of things. So after about a week or so, after about 2 attempts that way, we sat down and had a look, had a chat, had a really good conversation with Amelia about how they used audio description around what the problems of the Zoom interface were causing for them. And we just basically had the quick thought of like, okay, what we'll do is, instead of having trying to do it on the same feed line as the webinar, we'll have a separate phone in line with a single click, dials dials the number and logs you in, so you don't have to do any numbers. You can just click on a URL or scan a QR code, and immediately you're on the audio description line, and there'll be the audio describer and anyone who needs the audio description, and you can adjust via that line the loudness of the feed as you need it. If you're watching a performance and you really need to understand what's going on screen, you can turn up your audio description or turn it down, and it's all perfectly adjustable and personal preferences. It's also very, very like how it works inside in the real world, in the real Z world, in the physical world. When you've got audio description, you have somebody who sits beside you and tells and describes to you what is going on stage, and often the audio describer and the person who needs audio description will be able to have a discussion of how much detail they need, what level of information, and we'll often have conversations about what's going on. So we had an audio description line that was opened. It was staffed by a couple of wonderful queers, Dot and Liam mostly, and we would have that open. I would sit in the audio description line, making sure it was up and running fine, and there was no neo-Nazis or anyone coming in on it. And what this also meant is that audio description line and its models could be used by different venues as well. We loaned it out. We loaned it out to a couple of other queer events who needed an audio description line for a film or something like that. They could book it. They could just come to me and say, I need an audio description line, and I would set one up for them, or just open up the Queer House Party one for them if we weren't using it. And it just allowed more people to go along and enjoy an event and to really take part in it. And one of the great things that I've seen with the Queer House Party team, who have changed personnel a tiny bit over the last couple of years, one of the things that I've seen is they still have that commitment to accessibility. They've gone to a different provider who can provide some really great tech for them at the site as well as off-site, which is great. It means I can eventually, one of these days, attend one of the Queer House Party events, although I'm now so old, cranky and Eurospicy, going to a dance party just without having my pyjamas on doesn't feel quite right. That was the coolest thing, actually, of Queer House Party. I used to be able to go to a dance party in my pyjamas, and I would, about midnight or so, when the performances ended, everyone else would continue partying till 3 or 4 a.m. and I would go, I love yous all, but I'm going to go listen to some music, read a book, and go off to bed, and I'd be asleep by 1 o'clock. And it was brilliant because I'd had a night of brilliant performance, brilliant music. I'd chatted to people online. This is also one of the other things that you realise is the tone of the tone of everything is set by the interactions, the way that people interact with you from the first second you come in. So from the first second people would look up Queer House Party. We had a very friendly website that in very clear but very friendly language talked people through what to expect, what safety measures we were taking, how they could keep themselves safe, what the rules were, what was it. We like tits and bums, but we don't want your junk, or we don't want to see your junk. And essentially it was, look, we can't guarantee that there's no underage kids on here. We're doing our best. We promote it, but we're happy. It's 25 degrees in the centre of London and at 11 o'clock at night and you're dancing around your own flat. That's completely fine. If you're on camera and you're dancing around in next to nothing, that's also completely fine. Just don't give us full frontal nudity. But we found a way of saying that was really inclusive, that didn't value anyone's nudity over anyone else's, and it was all about being fun and being free and being experimental and setting boundaries in a way that was really clear and very generous and very inclusive. And I think there's a lot more to discuss on this, but I'm running out of voice and running out of brain. One of the things that I will say is if you get a chance to go and listen to Queer House Party, if you get a chance to go to one of their parties, go to it. They're brilliant. Their music is great. Their vibe is amazing. Tali is a brilliant host. Harry and Pasa. Oh, and I've forgotten the other DJ. Oh, my brain is dead. I am so sorry. I can see Seren, but I can't remember Seren's DJ name, and this is just going to make my brain fry. I'm so sorry. But their music is brilliant. It's really diverse and different. The performances, the dances they have, totally diverse and different. Go and see them.